Okay, hello, my name is Miguel Tejeda, and this is my video of my final project of doing business in the Americas. Okay, I'm going to talk about Jaguar and its history. Let's start. Okay, Jaguar is one of the most famous car manufacturers in the world. It's now for producing cars with style, speed, and elegance. In the 50s, Jaguar's performances in the racing circuits filed the headlines. The combination of exceptional engineering with outstanding performance, making their models the focus of all eyes. Okay, the desire of the founder Williams Lyons was to create cars, possibilities similar to humans, cars that move like the animals that give them the name Jaguar. Jaguar has a glorious history, and the challenge is to use is a basis for the future instead of being stuck in the past. Okay, Jaguars was founded in the 20s, starting to manufacture sidecars for motorcycles, founded by Lyons with only 21 years. Lyons began manufacturing cars using previous car models, but he wanted was to do something more prestigious. His first success was the SS19 model that looked like a real sport car, and it was when the company went from being called Swallow to SS Jaguar in 1935. And the first SS Jaguar 100 car was born, designed for racing at that time. When the Second World War began, the company stopped producing cars to start producing armaments and aircraft. But Lyons worked on a new engine that would launch the market once the Second War ended, and that would make Jaguar a world power. It was the engine XK, a 6-cylinder engine with 160 horsepower. Due to the war and the Nazi SS movement, the company was renamed, removing the letter SS and leaving the company only with the name Jaguar. At the end of the war, a new car came to the market with the new integrated XK engine, a fully sport car. This would be the XK 120. People did not believe that it would reach the 195 kilometers per hour that was said, and when it attested to the public were around would demonstrate the opposite, reaching 213 kilometers per hour. Once demonstrated that it reached more than predicted, they began to use in the race at Silverstone, where with 3 cars XK 120 took the first and second place, being the fastest cars of that time, which for several years would be the leaders of the Silverstone races. In 1954 came the aerodynamic model Type D that would make the Jaguar in racing's legends, specializing in Le Mans racings, where Jaguars and Ferraris would compete for victory for several years, and in which his first race would take his first race won. A race where an accident killed more than 8 people and where the son of William Lyons died. The following years, the Type D would be the leaders of the Le Mans races. In February of 1955, the Jaguar factory was born, and even though economically it affected the economy of the company. After a short time, production was restarted. The Type D model was discontinued due to the fact that the tolls had been destroyed in the fire, and they were dedicated to manufacturing commercial commercial model so that the company could recover what was lost. At that time, it was created the model that would replace the XK120, that would be the XK140, with more power and easier to handle, and a few years later the model XK150. With these brakes, racing cars would be created, which would turn it into authentic classics. At the beginning of the 60s, a new line of cars came into the market, which would be the XKE, with a similar to the Type D, but this would not be racing. However, it reached a speed of 140 kilometers per hour, with more than 165 horsepower. This car cost less than half than of a Aston Martin and the third part of a Ferrari. They took out a model for which it would be for races. When Ferrari took out the 150 GTO to compete, Jaguar counter-attacked with a Type E of lightweight, or Type D, Type E with of lightweight, where Ferraris won several times, and now this model is around 1 billion euros. To maintain the advantage in the market, Jaguar takes out an E-Type model with 4 seats for families. That is very practical for families with children, while still having the power of a car like Type D. During that time, Jaguar had a club where people with any type of these cars could go to test their skills in a racetrack and obstacle course. Besides that, they could take courses to improve their skills when handling this type of cars. In 1967, the Series 2 of the Type E is presented. Without great modification, only a little more luxury in its finishes and its interior of the car, reducing the power in the engine, making it just a luxury car. Also, for the new car Series 3 Type E was create a new engine that would be the V12 engine that returned to the Type E to have a fast and luxury car. This would live in the years of 1971. This car returned to Jaguar to continue competing in the races. In his first race of a Series 3 Type E, the Jaguar crossed the finish line by a little less than 30 seconds of advantage. For the year 1975, it would be the end of the era of Type E because of the disadvantage they had in the market, and because it was time to move to the next level. In addition to that, in that year, the founder of Jaguar and one of the best car designers in the world to retire. In 1968, a new model was created with a new style and greater sophistication and development, which would be the XJS model that would sustain the company for almost 2 decades. This car would maintain the performance that Jaguar was already holding, and this having an injection engine type UV12 with great speed and a refined model called the attention of the riders. And it was so another Jaguar started in the world of racing. The company had several successes on the race tracks, which forced Jaguar to create new models to compete at the market level and the level of race cars. This led the company to create the XJ220 model. The competition of Jaguar was quiet, and at that time the company did not have the best time, what forced him to seek partnership to continue competing in the market, and that was how Ford presented an offer that Jaguar could not refuse with a little more than 1,800 million euros. During the 90s, a new era for the Jaguar company began. With the rebuild of Ford, they want to continue maintaining the Jaguar philosophy and style, and it was when Ford began to tour and realized that the customer what they wanted. It was an authentic Jaguar Sport, something like the XKE, and it was created for sale in what would be the new car of Jaguar, the XKA convertible. With good reception from the market, this model was one of the best sellers during that time. But it was not the only model that went on sale at that time by Jaguar. During the year of 1999, it went on sale what would be Type S. This model would be a smaller, aimed at buyers with a sporty model and medium size. During the 2002, the Type X would come out, which expanded the range of Jaguar cars to 4 models at that time. In the year of 2003, Jaguars would release a car that would continue to set the piece of the company, XJ aluminum body, with the usual interior leader and would that identify the Jaguar cars, which was more magnetic performance, what it made it shine. The fans went to this car as a model worthy to wear the Jaguar brand. To finish this, Jaguar has come a long way since its founding by a 20-year-old man was for £20,000 borrowed more than 80 years ago. Even though William Lyons has disappeared, his legacy lives on in the historical brands created by him, in today's models and hopeful in tomorrow's Jaguars.